Welcome to Breaking Kayfabe. I am Drew, I'm with Penny and Crystal, and we have a guest. Kynan Diaz is a good friend of mine. He went to UNLV. He's a professor at UNLV. He has a master's degree from UCLA, and he's just an all-around swell dude.
Wow.
Yeah. Kynan, thank you for coming on.
Thank you. What a nice intro. I'm glad to be here. I know nothing about wrestling.
You don't have to.
You don't have to.
You don't have to for this. I asked Kynan to be on because he is, he teaches the young minds that want to get into film, and one of the things that he shows them is this movie. So he has a doctorate in this movie, if you will.
Oh boy.
Wow.
We'll see.
So every time I fuck up, Kynan is definitely gonna be like,
we'll see what we can do.
We have an expert on hand.
Oh jeez. I don't think that's right, but okay.
So,
Well, I mean, I've only seen it once the whole way through, so technically, yes, you are an expert to me.
I've seen it 3 times, so all right.
Good enough. More than us.
So the reason I picked this was because first, when I first started to really get into just renting DVDs, Blockbuster had their own mail-in service where you could get 3 movies for like $20 and they would just mail them to you. And within the first couple weeks, I had already seen about like 12, 15 movies. And this is pre-cell phones where you would actually watch a movie. And like I didn't have a bunch of friends, so I wasn't texting during the movie, so I would watch the whole movie. So
Yeah.
One of the suggestions was All About Eve, and I watched it and I thought about it. I'm like, wow, that's a crazy movie. And I didn't really go back to it for a long time, and then I had seen different things about it. I'm like, I need to watch that movie. And I remember buying the Blu-ray like when I first moved to LA, and I opened it and I just never watched it until earlier in the week. And I've lived in Los Angeles for about 13 years now, so that was fun. And also currently there's a storyline going on in All Elite Wrestling where one of the characters is named Toni Storm. She has become a movie star, like a 40s movie star who's a professional. Her name's Timeless Toni Storm.
Yeah.
Her like every time she comes out, it's in black and white.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's certain times where she's wrestling and then the camera will turn in black and white when like she'll do a move.
They're committing.
Wow.
Yeah, she's essentially Norma Desmond.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
which is really funny. Her character is just Norma Desmond, and now
Like when she's not wearing her wrestling boots, she's got house shoes on and a robe.
And she's thrown. And they've even gotten Mankiewicz from AMC in a couple of these because it's Turner owned.
Yes,
So
really.
like, they've done sketches when he is sitting right next to Toni Storm and they're just talking about old movies, and he's just like, I don't know what I'm doing here, which is like is fucking great. There is a new girl in town named Mariah May. She's from England. She was a part of this Japanese wrestling scene, which Toni started from. Mariah May ultimately decided to come to America and wrestle, and she is like, oh my god, Toni, I'm such your biggest fan. I just want to do everything like you. And now what's happening in the storyline is Mariah is dressing up as Toni Storm's old gimmick. And so what's essentially happening now is Mariah May is getting really popular, and then they're going to shift the story because Toni is the champion for the women, and they're going to shift the story where Mariah is ultimately going to become the Eve character and take everything from Toni. So that's the reason why we're doing this for Breaking Kayfabe this week. It's partly part of wrestling, and then obviously it's one of the best movies ever made. Kynan, I got a question.
Yeah.
Do you think this movie has a Simpsons reference?
I did watch All About Lisa this morning, which is from the 19th season. So I have not seen all of The Simpsons past a certain point, and the Simpsons fans always debate about when you should stop watching The Simpsons.
It's as soon as Phil
The
Hartman
answer is
died.
never. Oh wow.
Soon as
Sure.
That is Drew's hard line in the sand is when Phil
Phil
Hartman
Hartman
passes.
That might be it, but this is a very good episode. This is maybe not as good, whatever, like nostalgia glasses. You think the whenever you were 13 was the best time for The Simpsons. I mean, this is a good episode.
Yeah,
it's really
good episode.
Yeah, very good. But yeah, this is a good one. All about Lisa, and it's all about Lisa becoming Krusty's assistant by accident, and then replacing Krusty to become entertainer of the year. Yeah, it's a crazy movie.
Quote that I enjoy the most from the entire episode is the beginning when they have Sideshow Mel do the narration like he's all about
great.
We now come to our final award, Entertainer of the Year, an award so prestigious that it recently won the Award of the Year award at the 2007 Awardie Awards.
Yeah, that's
so
great.
All About Eve is based on the story from Mary Orr, who wrote the story called The Wisdom of Eve. It's about the secretary of the Oscar-nominated actress named Elizabeth Berginger, because she had told Mary about her experience of dealing with a secretary who was just like Eve. She ultimately took over her life. One of the things that they don't talk about is it's amalgamation of different people, but there's actually one person, and one person kept writing Mankiewicz a bunch of letters until like the 80s saying that you need to have the version of my story, not
Oh wow.
She wrote the story in 4 days, and it was bought by Cosmopolitan magazine in 1946 for $800. The story was bought by 20th Century Fox for $5,000, and it was given to Joseph Mankiewicz because he wanted to make a movie about an aging actress, and he wasn't sure how to do it. And then he read that, and he's like, well, I can weave this into what I want to do.
Yeah.
Derek Zanuck agreed. He was giving notes on the screenplay as well. Derek Zanuck was the catalyst into changing the title of All About Eve, because the initial script was 50 pages longer, and it made Eve more sinister and evil from the beginning. Zanuck was like, no, take out the 50 pages. Let's have her slowly climb into her evilness. And instead of calling it best performance, we should call about All About Eve, because you say early in the script that this is all about Eve. So that was what we can call the movie. It's all about Eve. The initial person that was going to play Margo was Claudia Colbert, who was from a movie called It Happened One Night. She withdrew because she was shooting a movie and she messed up her back. Mankiewicz briefly considered Ingrid Bergman before giving the role to Bette Davis. Bette Davis just ended her 18-year relationship with the Warner Brothers because of poorly received films. And also, she was kind of a pain to work with, which kind of fucked her career a little bit. But it's the thing of, if a man did it, and I'm not trying to get like points here, but like if a man did it, it would be considered like, oh, he's tough. But if a woman did it, who's like, who the fuck does she think
difficult.
She is?
Of course.
She's difficult. So one of the
men are rewarded for it.
One of the things that they said is just like, hey, be careful with her, because the quote was, she'll grind you into fine powder.
Oh my God. Wow.
And she'll constantly give you notes on the script. And what happened was Bette Davis read the script and she was just like, oh, this script's perfect. I don't have to say anything about this.
Right.
And it's like, the only reason why I say anything about the other scripts is because all these other ones are fucking bad. This is an amazing script, so I'm not going to say anything about it.
Amen.
The original Margo was supposed to be like really like cheery and good time and but if you're hiring Bette Davis, you gotta have somebody that's kind of like a little bit a chip on her shoulder. So they had to revise the script to match her. It's considered one of the better moves in like film history, because like the movie is about her and Baxter. She campaigned when she got an Oscar. She campaigned to be Best Actress.
Okay.
which in a way shouldn't have happened, but
How do you mean? So
she should have been for best supporting, even though the movie's about her.
Sure.
But Betty Davis, this is her like role. Like,
yeah.
if she would have most likely been the only person nominated for Best Actress, because this movie is the only time ever that 4 women have been nominated for an Oscar. Yeah, Anne Baxter, Betty Davis, Celeste Holm, Thelma Ritter, who were all nominated. Thelma Ritter and Celeste Holm were Best Supporting.
Which is amazing. How much screen time did Thelma have? It was not that much.
Not
pretty
enough.
Awesome.
Not enough. That's my one complaint about the movie.
Absolutely.
Is that Birdie disappears, which makes sense. Like intellectually, it's like Eve comes in and then we just stop seeing Birdie.
It displaces her, right?
Right. But we don't even mention her again, and we're not like I miss Birdie. Yeah. But yeah, that's the only flaw in the movie because Thelma Ritter is so good.
This movie was a smash success. Movie did $3.1 million. Smash success. Like it was the Titanic of its day.
The Titanic or the Avatar.
Yes.
Like they were just like, whoa, look at her run down those stairs. That's incredible. The movie was released October 13th, 1950. During that same week, the FCC first issued a license for television to broadcast in color, and that license went to CBS. So in the same week, they started to move color television forward. The movie was an award season smash. It set the record for most Oscars nominated with 14. It's since been tied by Titanic and La La Land. All 3 of those movies have won Best Picture. One won it for 2.5 minutes.
Who can forget that night?
The movie won the BAFTA for Best Film, the DGA Award, the PGA Award, the Writers Guild Award, the Golden Globe, and it even won the jury prize for Cannes for Best Film and an acting prize for Betty Davis. It's funny, that movie won 6 Oscars. And before we go talk about like what Oscars it won, I was doing actual research on it, and it's hilarious because they were saying, yeah, the award show was fine, it was great, but you know, Marlene Dietrich showed up in this just scantily clad dress, and I'm like, oh shit, what did the dress look like? And then it is a fucking black dress. And you're like, are you kidding me?
Well, for the time.
Exactly. But still, I was just
like,
you're
like, let me see. Oh, she's showing shoulder.
That's
how crazy.
You show like this much back then, and then it's like, look at that harlot.
It's like, God damn.
Look at her.
It's like all those women had to go home to their husbands, and he was like, you better not ever be on a set that she is on. I swear to Christ.
No, they were all like, I saw you looking at her clavicle. Don't lie.
It's like, no, they were down the street at that In-N-Out Burger. It's just like, so what is Marlene Dietrich have that I don't got you? But the movie won 6 awards that night. It won for Best Sound Recording. It won for Best Costume by Edith Head, who also is famous because that is Edna Mode from The Incredibles.
Oh, yes. Okay, I was like, that hair looks familiar.
I mean, to be fair, like Eve's last outfit is incredible. That
it
cape
is.
with the drama.
Yeah.
And because I don't know this, and I know they did this, but I want to know what all the colors of the gowns actually were, because I know in black and white film, they would tend to use certain colors to make certain things look darker, lighter, things like that. Because, you know, there's that famous photo of the Addams Family set where everything is like pink and green and like, you know, yellow and pastels and stuff. So I'm like, I want to know what color all those gowns are.
So Crystal, as I was doing research, there is drawings of different dresses that Edith Head was going through. And then the most famous one is Betty Davis's dress at the party, and it is a brown dress.
It's brown. Well, okay.
It's brown.
Honestly, I do not like brown on me. It does not look good on me. But when people who can wear brown wear it well, it looks really nice. It's a very nice color.
Other awards that they won were Best Supporting Actor for George Sanders.
And the winner, Joseph L. Mankiewicz.
It won Best Direction. It won Best Screenplay. And it's weird because none of the actresses won any of the awards.
And that's so good.
That is. They all did a good job. They were great.
And
They
so,
made that movie.
I know.
So the winners were actually Judy Holliday for Born Yesterday for Best Actress and Josephine Ho for Harvey. The Best Actress award is also hilarious because that same year, Sunset Boulevard came out, and
Right,
Gloria Swanson as Norma Desmond, which Toni Storm is playing,
Right.
also was nominated, but she, didn't get enough votes
That's
that year.
At what point then does Mariah May fully step into her Eve role?
I think
Right now she's just, cosplaying as Toni in the way that Eve cosplayed as Margo.
I think when we get closer to All In, because it's going to be in England and she's British. So when we get closer to All In, that's when she's going to fully.
Mariah May, who we now know, will face her mentor, timeless Toni Storm. Mariah May going home to Wembley. What's the cause of it all? Nigel, what are you going to say about that? Oh my God. I can't believe what we just witnessed. Mariah May, Toni Storm, official for Wembley Stadium, but this is despicable.
Well, no, it's gonna probably be something better. All About Eve is a fantastic movie, and we'll start with the summary.
The Sarah Siddons Award for Distinguished Achievement is perhaps unknown to you. It has been spared the sensational and commercial publicity that attends such questionable honors as the Pulitzer Prize, and those awards presented annually by that film society.
I've always thought that was a weird part because it's just so up its own ass in a weird way, where they're making fun of a Pulitzer, like Pulitzer, and then you'll find out later because they're like, he's making movies in Hollywood. And you're just like, oh, it's
Slumming it.
Yeah, it feels like they're slumming it, but it's also kind of hilarious. But the movie starts off, they're in the dining hall, and you hear Addison DeWitt, George Sanders. Kynan, could you fill us in on what George Sanders was in before? I mean, there's one thing that you definitely know he was in.
Yeah, well, his most famous thing I would say is Shere Khan,
Yeah.
which is afterwards. So he's the voice of Shere Khan in the Disney Jungle Book. Yeah.
Okay.
Right. I don't know any Shere Khan lines, but you can imagine a tiger.
Oh, yes, of course.
Right?
Yeah.
Icon.
Yeah.
The original
He
star.
just has that wonderful voice. Yeah, the original scar, exactly.
Exactly.
That wonderful voice. He'd been in a couple of Hitchcock movies. Rebecca, the Best Picture winner.
Oh, Rebecca.
Yeah, he and Vincent Price kind of would go out for similar parts of like well-spoken, creepy but really alluring guys. You can't tell if you want to go home with them or you want to run away from them. Yeah. Oftentimes, like I'll argue in this movie, like coded gay, right? Like he's supposed to be a gay character. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah. So like textually, you need someone who like textually can say like he's after all these women. And you can believe that enough, like in the front of your head, but in the back of your mind,
you're like,
he's really,
And that belief just
not
enough.
really, yeah.
But George Sanders dies at 65, and when I was looking up him, he committed suicide, and he left a suicide note behind, and it reads, "Dear world, I'm leaving because I'm bored. I've lived long enough. I'm leaving you with your worries in this sweet cesspool. Good luck."
Honestly,
I know that's right.
No, that's like that is completely understandable. He was like, you know what? I've gotten this old. I don't want to see any more of it. I'm done. Oh wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, he's our first voiceover, and this is something that's interesting with this movie is there's different voiceover. Different voiceovers.
It's almost like it's so weird. Like I did not expect to see that in this movie. You know what else like really stood out to me though? And I was like, I don't know if I'm right, but it's amazing that they're just like freeze frame. I bet you're wondering how I got here. You know what I mean? Like, is that the first instance of that trope like ever being used in film?
I mean, it could be one of them. I don't think it's the first
I don't know if
necessarily.
it's the first, but like it was just interesting to see that thing happen in a movie that's obviously like how old now? 70-something years?
Yeah.
Something like
He's like,
that.
you're probably asking about how I got here.
You're probably wondering how I got here. Well, let me tell you the story. It was just really funny.
It's probably the first famous instance of it.
Yeah, I was not expecting that.
But Addison DeWitt's voiceover is very who he is, where he's just like, you're an idiot. I'm literally telling you what you need to know and how important I am. You unwashed masses. And then he introduces everybody at the table. He introduces Karen Richards, who's Celeste Holm. Do you have any facts about Celeste Holm, Kynan?
Oh, not particularly. She'd won an Oscar already a couple years ago for another Best Picture winner called Gentleman's Agreement. And then she would go after All About Eve. I was reading that she decided she really likes theater and she doesn't like film as much. So she would go and do as much theater as possible. But but then she went back to TV and screen later on. But so it's sort of a missing gap right after All About Eve in her resume.
Yeah, I think she was just scared of Bette Davis because they fucking hated each other.
Yeah,
really? Wow.
Because there's that show, Feud.
Yeah,
with that one. So I guess Bette Davis just made enemies everywhere.
Yeah,
Betty
people
Davis
did not really like her. Yeah, they had trouble with her a lot. Yeah,
Bette Davis is that type of person who is an asshole, like to everybody.
Right.
But like if there's any sort of injustice that's going on, where like she was a real staunch person about like with the Black community, where she's just like, oh no, this is bullshit. Like I know I'm an asshole.
She's abrasive, but she's abrasive the right way. Sometimes.
Yeah, she did some really cool
nice,
stuff.
But kind.
Yeah, she was. She sued Warner Brothers, and that was a big problem with her relationship with Warner Brothers for how unfair the contract system was, and that didn't pass. But she was really famous for going against her own studio and saying that they're mistreating labor. During the war, she started this thing called the Hollywood Canteen that became really famous, where it was this restaurant and it was staffed primarily by movie stars. So like if you were on leave in LA, you can go get a burger served, to you by your favorite movie stars and Bogart and Bacall and Lana Turner. Yeah. And they wanted her really badly to become the president of the Academy, but she was too busy. And but they really liked how much she stood up for people. But she was also Celeste Holm spoke about her experience with Bette Davis on the first day of shooting. I walked onto set on the first day and said, "Good morning." And you know her reply? She said, "Oh shit, good manners." I never spoke to her again, ever. Years later, Bette Davis said in an interview, "Well, let me try to do it, Betty. Did you mind? I'm gay. Do you mind if I do a Bette Davis or try to?"
Of course.
Filming All About Eve was a very happy experience. The only bitch in the cast was Celeste Holm.
I think I've heard that.
The ghost of Bette Davis just walked in.
Thank you. But she seems so nice. But yeah, according to Bette Davis, she was the only troublemaker on set. Celeste Holm.
We're introduced to everybody at the table. We're introduced to Max Fabian, who's the theatrical producer. Is he drinking Alka-Seltzer?
Yeah.
Okay. Like, why is it bubbling?
It's been around forever. Another thing we didn't know was that old.
We're introduced to Bette Davis, who in that world is a star, and she's an older woman who's playing younger woman roles, which is funny.
Would never happen today.
Exactly. And she's just there smoking, staring at this bitch getting an award. And she's just like, oh God, I hate her so much. As we're introduced to her playwright boyfriend and Celeste Holm's husband.
Fiance. I think they're engaged or dating. They don't get married yet until the end of things.
Just, if this was made now, they would have showed the cheating. They would have absolutely have showed the cheating. Like that would have been, because it's more implied, because we talked about the Hays Code for a split second before we started. I mean, that's why they're in two different beds in the scene.
The twin beds.
back in 1950, you could watch this movie and they give you enough rope to think that Eve made up that she's sleeping with Lloyd, right? Well, I think it's very clear that she's sleeping with Lloyd, but they do enough of it. They're like, oh, Eve just made that up, and they see Lloyd and Karen at the end making up and kissing and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to believe that good people could possibly cheat on their wives, right? You're just like, oh no, that's just a lie. That didn't happen. Don't worry about it.
Eve is going up to get her award, and everybody's just clapping, like, oh my God, this is so great, this is so great. And then we get the freeze frame, and then we get the comical, this is not the real story. Let's start the real story.
Eve the golden girl, the cover girl, the girl next door, the girl on the moon. Time has been good to Eve. Life goes where she goes. She's been profiled, covered, revealed, reported, what she eats and what she wears and whom she knows and where she was and when and where she's going. Eve. You all know all about Eve. What can there be to know that you don't know?
Freeze frame.
Yeah, and it has that freeze frame, and there's this pair of guns on the wall behind Eve. And it freeze frames, and they're both pointing at her, so it freezes there, and the old guy's like giving her the award, and everyone's there clapping, but it's got a weird gun there, and obviously I don't think you noticed that kind of thing on like the first viewing or anything, but
no, but
when you watch it again, you're like, oh, that's really fun.
That is funny.
The film takes place from October to June, which is weird, and just how this woman kind of fucked up her. Well, she didn't really fuck up their life, because like honestly, Margo's the only one that gets a happy ending. Anyway,
right? Kind of escapes.
Yeah,
that's true.
There's a fan at the theater, and she is watching the performance of Margo, and she meets her in the back alley. It's kind of a weird thing where they're all hanging out, and Margo is the king shit of their friends, and then they invite Eve, this poor girl, just poor Eve.
Poor Eve.
They just invite her back, and then Eve tells this like really elaborate story where like
a sob story more. Oh God.
There were violins in the background.
Right? Like tiny.
My husband died in the war, and it's like
everybody has a dead husband in the war. Come on.
You're not special.
It's like I was in San Francisco, and that was the point where when I first watched it, I didn't know anything about it, and I wasn't cynical to the world.
Right.
Now I'm cynical, and I'm like, why the fuck would you let this person just walk in and
why?
just tell you a story?
There's a reason why today you can't just do that shit.
No,
for sure. This is like the very first instance of parasocial relationship gone wrong.
Yeah,
exactly.
Off the rails.
Like, we're all learning about Eve's story as we're going on, and then we're just assuming like Margo's a big shit deal because like she just got all the applause and shit.
Well, I mean, she acts like one. The way she is in that dressing room, the way she does everything, she's like, I'm the coolest shit here. Like, nobody's gonna tell me not to do something. Like, you can just tell when somebody is literally like, the queen of that area. Like, she's like doing whatever she wants. She's taking off her makeup. She's smoking a cigarette.
Well, in fairness, they're all in that room because of her.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, she knows she's a big shit deal. That's the thing about Margo.
Birdie is the first one to clock her as full of shit.
Birdie
I'd stay in San Francisco. I was alone. I couldn't go back without Eddie. I found a job, and his insurance helped. And there were theaters in San Francisco. And then one night, Margo Channing came to play in Remembrance. And I went to see it. Well, here I am.
What a story. Everything but the bloodhound snapping at her rear end.
And they're all scandalized, but she's like, I saw she's her from the beginning.
Didn't she call her a fifth-rate vaudevillian?
Fifth-rate vaudevillian, yeah, it's so great. Yeah, like Birdie has this whole implied backstory of like being a big deal, like or being a performer and being respected, and then like why does she become Margo's maid? but she just does, and she becomes really, really close to her and gets to still feel like a theater person, even though she's sort of the support system. I mean, she's just a fascinating character.
They all look down on Birdie, but Birdie's with the person who understands people better than anyone.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Thelma Ritter had this is like her big breakout movie, because she had been in a couple of important movies at Fox but not get credit for them, but she was a scene stealer. So I don't know if you know, like Miracle on 34th Street, where Santa Claus goes to work at Macy's, and she plays this mother who's, you know, her tough New York accent or whatever, and she's like how come I come here and there's not the toys I want and everything, and then Kris Kringle helps her, and she's like, oh, what a wonderful thing, I'm going to tell everyone about Macy's. And it was a small enough role that she didn't get any credit for, but people knew her from that. And then Joe Mankiewicz, used her in the previous year's movie, Letter to Three Wives, as another maid, but didn't give her credit again, because it was common that you'd only credit, like you see in the end of our movie, like 12 people, 20 people, and then everyone else wouldn't get any credit at all. But people within those two movies were already recognizing her and going, this is the most interesting actor I've ever seen. Yeah. So this is her first time like getting a big role with credit.
We meet Margot's fiance, Bill. And we find out that Bill is going to be in Hollywood for a month for one picture.
Slumming it.
As he says, Zanuck is impatient. He wants me. He needs me. And so over that time, Eve becomes Margot's assistant, and everything to Eve, or everything to Margot. Like, she just takes care of everything, and she's just like, oh, I got this. And then that's when you see Thelma Ritter, who's just walking around. It's like, this fucking asshole.
Yeah, you see Thelma Ritter like just walk as if Eve isn't there to kind of shake her off, you know? Yeah, just walk through her or put a tray down like through her as if she wasn't there.
Yep.
And then when they're at the airport, when she's saying her goodbye to Bill, like Margot and Bill are just having this like real tender moment. And then Eve is just like, she kind of cock blocks him, where she's like, hey, what's going on? And you're like, this is our time. This is our time.
You know she's doing that on purpose.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. He's so like blatant about what she's doing from the beginning. It's shocking to let Margot fell for it, other than she has an ego. Maybe she liked being stroked for a minute.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And then she's like, wait a minute. This isn't all about me. This is all about Eve.
That same night we sent for Eve's things, her few pitiful possessions. She moved into the little guest room on the top floor. The next 3 weeks were out of a fairy tale, and I was Cinderella in the last act. Eve became my sister, lawyer, mother, friend, psychiatrist, and cop. The honeymoon was on.
I think that advice still works. Like Eve, like let's say you're not a sociopath, like Eve. Like people like to talk about themselves is advice you get a lot. So like, hey, you know, you meet an editor and you're like, I want to be an editor. And it's like, hey, tell me about what it was like to edit this. And you know, they'll often pretend like, oh, I don't want to talk about it or whatever. People like that someone is listening to their life story. I think it actually works. Yeah.
Everybody loves that.
Yeah.
If they say they don't, they're lying.
Well, I don't like
You're a liar.
I don't know.
All right.
I don't like doing that shit.
Well, don't hit up Drew for advice then.
It's like, no, I'll just tell you I sell insurance. There's the cool shot of Eve watching Margot in the wings. I coined a phrase, Crystal and I have coined a phrase called waiting in the wings, bitch.
She was the first. She was the first
waiting
in the wings, literally.
Just waiting in the wings, bitch. Where she's like, ooh, if I get that moment, I'm definitely going to take it. Birdie was just saucy to her the entire time.
Margot probably liked Birdie at the beginning because of how acerbic she is and how they could trade these barbs back and forth, and that's like fun for her. But at a certain point, Margot's 40 and like not sure if she has it anymore, and she's like, I don't know if I want someone around to tell me I don't have it. Like when I knew I did have it and had confidence, that's great to have Birdie around and keep me humble. But now that I'm so I'm so on the edge of I'm on the bubble of whether I'm relevant. Like I don't know if Birdie is my sister, friend, accountant anymore. Like,
Yeah.
Like sometimes people need yes men. And
You're right.
I think that's
Absolutely.
Yeah.
why she's
Especially
doing
actors.
what she's doing.
mhm.
Oh God, especially actors. Yes.
This is the beginning of everything going awry. Is when Margo goes out and sees Eve with the dress and playing to the audience that isn't there, and Margo's just like, "Oh, that's adorable. It's weird, but adorable."
Nothing weird about that.
The thing that really gives Margo the like, oh fuck, is there's a late night phone call with her and Bill,
Oh God. Mm-mm.
and
Oh, that that was.
and Bill was just like, so what day is it? Is that Tuesday? I don't know. And then she realized, like, oh shit, it's your birthday.
Mhm.
Fuck, I forgot. I'm so sorry. Oh my God. And he's just like, it's okay. Eve called me earlier to wish me a happy birthday. And she's like, wait, what? What was that? Eve called you?
Mhm.
And so that's the beginning of everything falling down, because like Margo is like of a certain age.
Yeah, she's turning 40, right?
Yeah, like
That's
she's a little bit paranoid, and
Yeah.
she gets
Yeah.
jealous, and like if somebody's encroaching on her younger man, then she's like, I'm gonna end this bitch.
She's really feeling it, and I don't blame her, because she's turning 40 and he's 32, right? So he's 8 years younger than her.
Mhm.
It's pretty,
Yeah.
not significant, but it's a noticeable age gap. So of course, how old is Eve supposed to be? What, 23, 24?
Yeah.
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 A baby, essentially, a fetus. And she shows up like, oh, I just wanted to call him and make sure someone told him a happy birthday. It's like, what, you
Yeah.
did what now?
Yeah. Yeah.
Birdie. You don't like Eve, do you?
You want an argument or an answer?
An answer.
No.
Why not?
Now you want an argument.
She works hard.
Night and day.
She's loyal and efficient.
Like an agent with only one client.
She thinks only of me. Doesn't she?
Well, let's say she thinks only about you anyway.
How do you mean that?
I'll tell you how. Like she's studying you. Like you was a play or a book or a set of blueprints. How you walk, talk, eat, think, sleep.
I'm sure that's very flattering, Birdie. I'm sure there's nothing wrong with it.
Good morning.
That's where I would have sent her packing, me personally. I was talking to you guys like a couple weeks ago. I can't get less than like 8 hours of sleep because I get cranky, I get mean, I get headaches. Look, Eve placed that call for Margo to her fiance over in LA at 3:00 in the morning local time.
Mhm.
Don't you plan something for me at 3:00 in the morning that I don't know about, bitch? I'll kill you. That is the moment I've been like, you've overstepped. I didn't want that. And it turned out that Bill was like, oh, Eve must have set that up because, she sent me a letter. She was sending him letters on behalf of Margo, and she didn't even know.
Right.
And had she told her and just been like, hey, I'm sending him letters, is that okay with you? They're from you, but it would have been okay. But it's just maddening just watching this just disintegrate.
Mm-hmm.
That's when we go into the party. It's kind of like a stage play where that is where the
it definitely had stage play elements. Yeah,
most shit happens. Like it's 25-minute scene, like from start to finish. That whole thing is 25 minutes. Bill's there and he's telling Eve the story about him looking at the lens wrong, the viewfinder
wrong end of the viewfinder. Yeah,
wrong end of the viewfinder, and I'm just like that's a terrible story. Like, it's like what the viewfinder looks like. I don't understand why you would do that. It makes you look kind of dumb. Margo's just like, thank you. Margo is just like, oh, he's telling Eve this. Like, well, all right. And so at that party, she's just cold to Eve in a thing, and Eve is just like, oh, well, I just didn't mean to offend. I did, and so that's when Celeste and Karen is just like, hey, take it easy on her. And that's and I think it was it Bill or Celeste Holmes' husband who is just staunchly like 10 toes down defending her at that party.
Yeah.
I think it was Bill when they had that argument where he's like, she's the kid, and she's like, why do you keep calling her the kid?
Right.
Yeah.
Like, she's not a child.
And it's that weird thing where like if you're dating somebody long enough and that other person doesn't like a person, you have to not like them too. So like, why are you defending
The
Eve
package
so
deal.
hard?
Yes, exactly.
Like it's maddening where you're like, ugh, stop it.
Be on my side.
Yeah,
Whose side are you on here?
Right. It's
like
yeah,
you
and it's
just met this girl. You can't just be like, hey, knock it off.
I think it's brilliant that they make sure that it's Bill's birthday party, so it has all of this, the implications that even if Bill's acting out a little bit, Margot's supposed to like you see through it for a night at least and like give Bill his night. But everybody comes into that space and they know that they don't treat it like Bill's party. They know it's Margot's party, right? So they all come and they're like, oh, we have to give deference to Margot, and Margot gets to pick the music, and it's Margot's house, and so like I like that sort of insight into their relationship. That Bill knows that even if it's supposed to be his party, it's not. It's Margot's party.
Yeah. She plays the song 4 times in a row, and he's like, hey, play that same song again. He's like, we've already played it 4 times, play it again.
This will be the 5th, she says.
You just see her getting drunker and more abrasive as time goes on. Like, okay, it might be time for you to go upstairs.
And she said, all right, whoever you are, come off it.
But Davis soon realized that the man on the phone was not a prankster. Daryl Zanuck was offering her what sounded like the role of a lifetime. After reading Joe Mankiewicz's script, she was sure of it.
She was absolutely thrilled. Betty Davis was very shrewd, and when she saw something that was good, she respected that. But in this case, as soon as she read that script, she knew that we're talking about quality here. And of course, it was a perfect casting.
The aging actress had agreed to play an aging actress. In fact, it was hard to miss the frequent parallels in the script between the career of Betty Davis and that of her fictional counterpart, Margo Channing.
Her facial expressions in this are so fucking funny.
It's her movie.
It's her movie. It's just, her entire face just makes the jokes, makes the lines land, where she's just always like, okay.
She's original resting this face.
Really, she is. Yeah. She is the blueprint for RBF. Yeah. I love it.
And then this is around the time, as all that's happening, that's when we get the famous line.
Fasten your seatbelts. It's going to be a bumpy night.
So
I had no idea.
Yeah.
This was in there, and I was like, "Oh my god, this is incredible."
This movie was made before cars had seatbelts, so she's talking about a plane, and the plane.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, it's the bumpy ride of the plane. The turbulence.
I get it now.
Because airplanes had seatbelts, cars did.
Oh, I didn't know
and
that.
I mean,
That's
planes
cool.
back then were, those little propeller things. So if you hit turbulence, you're like, I might die.
Right.
I may die.
Yeah.
Addison DeWitt shows up, and then Margot's just like, oh shit, I could have sworn I put you off the guest list. I don't know how you're here. This is crazy. Addison DeWitt, shows up with a wild Marilyn Monroe appears.
Oh my gosh.
A wild Marilyn Monroe.
Wild Marilyn Monroe. She looks so young. She looks so just like not what my memory of her is when she's full in her sexy star, the hottest woman in Hollywood thing. Here she's like,
right.
Well, I guess she was always young. She was only 35 or 36
no,
when
but
she died?
I guess when I say young, I mean she doesn't look quite like
more like an ingenue.
Yes, exactly. She looks very just like fresh and sort of like, I won't say innocent. She's never like whatever, but she's the very just like,
I think she would have just gotten her blonde hair within the past couple of years and figured out her persona, because she was more, I don't know what you call it, auburn naturally. Yeah. So she would have just started to figure those things out. Yeah. And apparently she was really, because So I don't know what you all think. Marilyn Monroe, I think, is a great actor, and
Yes.
she did not give enough credit. But she, like, people think of her as being her characters as being stupid, as being a ditz, of not being cultured. But she apparently was incredibly nervous to be around Betty Davis. So she knew Betty Davis not just as a star, but like as an actor. And like, okay, here's my, maybe my second big part, and I'm going to be in with Betty Davis now. And then you hear those stories, right, that would lead to her, killing herself, right, about like how unconfident she was, right, and how it would take her half a day to come out of her trailer because she was so terrified of being on set, right? And then when she nails it, and she's like, oh yeah, she's like, all the eyes of the world are on her, right? When she nails it, you can't tell the difference. But yeah, apparently she was vomit on set of All About Eve.
Wow.
Yeah, but she was so scared of Betty Davis. Yeah, of disappointing Betty Davis.
I don't blame her at
understand that
all.
completely, because at the time Betty Davis is legendary. She's Betty Davis
already. Yeah.
I distinctly remember Addison crossing you off my guest list. What are you doing here?
Dear Margot, you were an unforgettable Peter Pan. You must play it again soon. You remember Miss Caswell?
I do not. How do you do?
We've never met. Maybe that's why.
Miss Caswell is an actress, a graduate of the Copacabana School of Dramatic Art. Ah, Eve.
This is the first time Eve is introduced to Addison DeWitt. Like, this is the first time we see that relationship, which is going to affect everything later. Miss Caswell, the name comes from Mary Orr. That's her original maiden name.
Oh, okay.
And the writer of the movie. So that is interesting. So this party is going off like a lead balloon. Just
it really, it is.
Just a bunch of unhappy people at this party, and as it's going,
Burrs and alcohol.
Betty Davis, it's just a bunch of cigarettes and alcohol, and she's just drinking martini after martini after martini.
You know what's funny though, honestly, the thing that I love the most about Marilyn Monroe's character in this scene is she's that person at the party who has no idea about any of the things that are going on between these people.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we've all been that person. We're sitting in a situation and you're just like, ooh, there's someone hates someone here.
Yeah.
And I don't know why.
Right.
But
Like
awkward.
as I'm watching it again, and this leads me to a movie that is going to sound weird when Crystal was just talking about that, but Spider-Man: Homecoming. And that scene in Spider-Man: Homecoming, where in the back of the car, which is the best scene in the history of Marvel cinema, is that when they're in the back of the car, and Peter Parker knows literally everything that's happening. Liz is just knows all the information, but knows none of the context. So she's telling her father, who knows nothing about what's happening, and then at the end, she literally tells him everything, and he knows what's happening. And then it's the most tense scene ever. And so, like, that scene reminds me of that, where
there's a lot of these people all know something
that I don't know.
But I don't know.
Yeah.
And Miss Caldwell is gonna live a great life. Like, she is going to find a nice guy who makes, over 100 couple K, and then she'll be banging her tennis instructor. like her life is going to be amazing, but she doesn't know anything about this.
Yeah, that scene is so great because they're all on the stairs, right? And they're all facing the same way, and they're like the audience, right?
Yeah.
But then they're like sparring with each other, but they're not quite looking back at each other.
It's like,
and
oh, waiter.
Then Eve comes in and Margot comes in, and the entire cast is lined up watching their own little play.
Like,
and exactly. And Marilyn Monroe just gets to be there, and she's been told to like pay attention, but she doesn't have that thing that Eve has, right, where she knows what to do with this information. So like she's getting this front row seat to the politics of the theater world, but she just doesn't have it, right? Where later on, when Eve becomes Addison's protege, she's like, oh, I know enough, and I think I'm even ahead of you, but she's not, right? But Miss Carswell is just like, oh, it's just nice to be here.
I'm just like be included.
Right, just be included.
I'm just having a good time. I don't know. I think it's a day later or a couple days later where the audition happens. Or no, she purposely lets her drink so she missed the audition. right?
Yeah, it's the next sequence, but yeah, I guess textually it's like a week or two later, but it feels like she's over drunk from this party, right? Just misses
Yeah.
Well, my favorite is just Addison Witt is just right there, and like Miss Caldwell. What was it implied that she was drunk, or was it implied that she was with child?
Oh, maybe that's interesting. I like that idea.
Yeah, because like
she's got morning sickness.
She goes to the audition 2 hours late.
Right.
It was fucking nuts.
Like it's over by then, honey.
Yeah, exactly. And then she's just gonna go into the theater like nothing happened. Like, all right, guys, let's go. All right, I'm ready to go. It's like, you are 2 hours late, goddammit.
But that's interesting because later Karen says, well, of course she was 2 hours late. What are you talking? Like, you should have anticipated she'd be 2 hours late. That's how every single event like this has happened. So Karen's accusation is even like, you knew that. So like somewhere behind you were trying to replace Margo. You were taking advantage of this opportunity to see Eve, right? To see her perform, even though you're like, oh, how could Margo Channing be 2 hours late? And it's like, well, she's 2 hours late to everything, literally everything.
Like, I mean, that's who she is as a person.
That's who she is, right.
So you can't really be mad. So, like, the fact that this was the line in the sand where you're just like, okay,
right. Like, it's obnoxious behavior, I think, to your point, right? For an actor to be 2 hours late. And this is so true. Whenever you're like, I love actors. I'm an actor. I love professional actors. But like, whenever I've had to like work as a PA and try to get an actor across town, like they completely have no sense of time or no sense that people are waiting for them. Yeah. And, the way production is fucked up and like enables that is that you get the actor to set and they yell at the PA and not the actor. Right? And they're like, how could you not? I'm like, well, of course, this is exactly what's going to happen. But yeah, but they're conditioned to not care about other people's timelines at all.
So the next scene happens. Does the article come out next, or
the article happens after Eve performs, so that's after the
gotcha. So yeah. I do love the fact that he went to an audition and was just like, wow, this audition was incredible. This has to be the greatest audition I have ever seen. But in that scene, when she pisses off Bill, she pisses off Lloyd, she even pisses off the producer.
Yeah.
Max. And she's just like going at everybody. It's just like calling people out of their names. She's like Denzel in Training Day, where she's putting cases out of all you bitches.
That's right.
That was
she's
incredible.
King Kong.
That was incredible. Like, she was
in the hilarious ass staging of them fighting. Then he runs and then he pops out of the window. Like, and then
and another thing. And another thing.
But the best part about the entire thing is Eve is at the beginning of that scene and she backs out. She is gone. Like, like she's like
my work here is done. Goodbye.
It's like
exactly.
It's like in The Simpsons where somebody runs out of a room and shuts the door and then turns on the car and leaves. Like the exact
and you just hear it all that,
And so from this simple man came the proof that we are not alone in the universe. I'm Leonard Nimoy. Good night.
Mr. Nimoy, we have 10 minutes left.
Oh, fine. Let me just get something out of my car.
I don't think he's coming back.
She is gone. The
Margo.
article.
I'm sorry. Margo does this brilliant thing because she understands the acoustics of theaters, that she could be on stage and she can, yell, but not use the top of her voice. And the theater is designed that way, that she could be on stage and the acoustics will go out into the house. And so then Max is like saying, blah, 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 and he's yelling at the top of his voice and getting shrill. She's like, I cannot hear you. Right? And he has to say it again.
That is so funny.
And
I didn't even
like
think of that.
So in command of what it is to be on stage. Yeah. So then they all leave and it's her and Bill. And a brilliant thing that happens is that it becomes about Bill and her and their relationship. It's no longer, it's about Eve because it's all about Eve. But it's about her and her relationship with Bill. And the camera then just uses the stage set and we no longer see the theater parts of it at all. We just see them in a room on a bed, and we just see them like in their own house having this argument. And it's not until he starts to walk away and it becomes more about Eve that we see like into the wings again. So like when it's just the two people, just like, so they're having this private bedroom conversation, and we don't see like, oh, it's actually, you know, on stage for 1,000 people. Right.
It's a bedroom on stage.
It's a bedroom on stage. Yeah. Because we never see anything of any of the stage performances. We only see the applause lines, right, when they're at the end, they're bowing. We never see anything of anybody actually performing on stage.
Yeah,
we don't need to, because having that conversation there and then panning out to remind us that we're actually on a theater stage is like, when it comes to Margo, it's never not on a stage.
Right.
Yep.
The article comes out, and it basically is just like, wow, Eve is the next revelation. Like she's the wow. It's like, this bitch is coming for everything. And then that pisses off Margo. So Margo, like, what's the best thing to do when you're mad is get engaged. Like, yeah, so Karen basically starts taking a liking to Eve. This is like Karen's part, and they are driving out to New York to for her performance, and to help Eve, which they don't really discuss, but Karen takes the gas out of the car. Okay, that's what I'm trying. Yes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, when it has that really, it has that really emotional like shot of all three of them in the car, and he leaves, and then it's just Karen and Margo. Yeah. And Margo has that just story of just vulnerability. That's when Karen apologizes, like, I'm sorry this happened. It's like, well, it's not your fault. And then that's when Karen makes the look like, oh shit.
Yeah.
It is my fault.
That happening, I thought to myself, I'm like, I need to see footage of Karen taking out the gas. Like, that would be hysterical. Where it's just be a montage of a woman that doesn't know how a car works.
Right.
Trying to figure it out.
I don't know how to take the gas out of a car. I've never done that.
Put the tube in and go, and then let it.
Oh no!
You have to suck it out, spit, and then hope the rest of it just comes pouring out via. There's some physics that happens there.
I've acted pretty disgracefully toward her too. Well, don't fumble for excuses. Not here and now with my hair down. At best, let's say I've been oversensitive to her. Well, to the fact that she's so young, so feminine and so helpless. To so many things I want to be for Bill. Funny business, a woman's career. The things you drop on your way up the ladder so you can move faster. You forget you'll need them again when you get back to being a woman. It's one career all females have in common, whether we like it or not. Being a woman. Sooner or later, we've got to work at it. No matter how many other careers we've had or wanted. And in the last analysis, nothing's any good unless you can look up just before dinner or turn around in bed, and there he is. Without that, you're not a woman. You're something with a French provincial office or a book full of clippings. But you're not a woman.
Margo is vulnerable with Karen, and they're just in the car, and she's basically saying, like, she thinks Bill is in love with the stage actor Margo, not the actual person. And it's also the fact that he's 8 years younger than her is something that's creeping into her head, where it's just like, oh shit, or any of these young girls can get him, and I have to deal with that. That's a good chunk of the reason why she has such contempt for Eve. Eve takes over for Margo, and it's just all like, everything is just coming up Eve for her. Like, it's just, she's just so great. And then she was just like, you know what, I'm gonna be bold. And then that's when she tries to put the moves on Bill.
Right.
Ooh, that was so hard to watch.
Right? Like,
Secondhand embarrassment was strong.
Yeah, he was just like, hey, don't just chalk this up to the game. Like, don't worry about it. Like,
Right, the fact that he was so like nice about it is what made it more embarrassing for her. He's like, whoa, don't be so hard on yourself. Just
Yeah.
you know,
She thought that was gonna work too.
Yeah.
It didn't work.
Yeah,
It happens.
it's like, hey, he called it an incomplete forward pass.
When I told you what every young actress should know,
When you told me that whatever I became, it would be because of you
makeup's a little heavy.
and for you.
You're quite a girl.
You think?
I'm in love with Margo. Hadn't you heard?
You hear all kinds of things.
I'm only human, rumors to the contrary, and I'm as curious as the next man.
Find out.
Only thing. What I go after, I want to go after. I don't want it to come after me. Don't cry. Just score it as an incomplete forward pass.
It's also funny because that argument happens as Eve is dressed in that dumbass wig.
Right.
And it's just you're having that serious ass conversation where I'm like, hey, you want to have sex, right? And I'm like, not in that wig, but
that's just further lending truth to the whole thing. We all know you never want to get caught doing something embarrassing or angry or just emotionally vulnerable in a fucking costume.
Yeah.
That's like you pray you don't have a fucking fight on Halloween, because if you're fighting as fucking like, Cleopatra on Halloween, it's gonna look bad. And I have been, not personally, but I've been somewhere where people got into a fight on Halloween, and I was like, this is embarrassing for everybody.
Wario and Waluigi couples costume.
And they're just getting into it. Can you imagine the mustaches just twitching everywhere as they're fighting?
And it's just like, why are they outside of a fucking IHOP yelling at each other?
But no, and then that's so because she has that wig on, and then afterwards she's like, I'm gonna destroy it, and she can't even like do it.
Right.
She's trying so hard to rip that wig apart.
Yeah. And they wonder if she did it on purpose, like if she felt she had to wear a costume to go after this particular part of what she was trying to do with, dismantling Margo's life and try to take it for her own.
To be in Margo's costume while she's
exactly
trying to become Margo. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So as the whole thing builds happening, Addison is right there. He's listening to the whole thing, and he's pretending that he didn't listen to it. And he's like, oh, what happened? Like, oh, that's crazy.
The look of relish on his face when he realized what was going on, he was like,
It's like the Grinch listening to Whoville, where it's just like,
yes, no, just he was like, oh, God.
He comes in, and then him hearing that, I think he had done a little bit of research on her, and he's just like, oh, some of this story doesn't check out, whatever.
Oh yeah, he definitely did.
And so
100%.
To confirm everything he knew like, hey, real quick, what was that theater in San Francisco, the Schubert, right? And she's like, oh yeah, no, the Schubert. And as she's doing that, she's taking off her clothes and then going in the shower, meaning like, you can get this if you stop asking questions. And he's just like, oh no, I'm good. And
that didn't work, but maybe it'll work with you.
As soon as she says that, he's just like, got you, bitch. And so like
reeling her in.
Time goes on, he releases the article. Margo is just like, well, I mean, that's it. She's just so pissed that this article came out.
I love that it's in the lobby for one of the restaurants, and Karen sees Addison with Eve, and they're talking and they're being all nice to each other. And then Addison literally goes over to the host stand and gets his newspaper article. So he literally goes over there and then brings it over to Karen and like gives it to her and hands it. See you later, Karen. Knowing exactly what's going to happen. Right.
Lo, these many seasons become more firmly rooted about my ears, is lifted to Miss Harrington. I am once more available for dancing in the streets and shouting from the housetops. I thought that one went out with Wolcott. Now, down here. Listen to this. Miss Harrington had much to tell, and these columns shall report her faithfully about the lamentable practice in our theater of permitting, shall we say, mature actresses to continue playing roles requiring a youth and vigor for which they retain but a dim memory.
I just can't believe it.
It gets better. About the understandable reluctance on the part of our entrenched first ladies of the stage to encourage, shall we say, younger actresses, about Miss Harrington's own long and unsupported struggle for opportunity.
I can't believe Eve said those things.
In this rat race, everybody's guilty till they're proved innocent.
Word goes back, like Bill is just like, hey, Margo, I got a story for you. Guess who tried to fuck me? And so with something like that, you know, they all go out to dinner and they're at the same restaurant, like he had said. And so what happens is Eve sends over a letter strictly to Karen and just meet me in the bathroom. And they're like, well, why the fuck you gotta go to the bathroom? It's like, I don't know. And then that's when Eve basically is just like, all right, listen up. I know you siphon off the gas, and I want this role that Lloyd wrote, and you're going to do that because you siphon off the gas, and I'm going to ruin your life if you don't do that. This is the first time we actually see Eve do something sinister, because
straight up duplicitous.
Yeah, like that article came out, and she was just like, "I'm on top of the world. Like you can't
do whatever I want."
They're having this back and forth in the bathroom, and it's hilarious because like that bathroom is like it's an upstairs bathroom.
Yeah.
And it's just like you see her sit there and then you see Eve walk down like and you're like, that is actually really funny.
I mean, to be fair, Addison seems to be just like Eve.
Oh yeah.
Messy.
That's why he clocked her from the beginning.
He's like, oh, I know you. We're the same.
It's the Garden of Eden, you know?
Right?
Like I said.
So I do this whenever like I do really like a movie and I look at the names of the characters, I always look them up to see what the meanings are. Because I know I do this. Whenever I write characters, I give them names that mean something pertinent to what happens to them or what they're about.
Yeah.
I looked up all the names of the characters in this movie. So it's funny that Eve chose her name to be Eve because she is, you know, the first woman. It means to live, to breathe. So she's like, this is how I'm going to make my life. This is the only way I can make my life. If I'm this person, this almost a cipher for every woman. She's every woman. She can be anybody. You know what I mean? And then
it's all in her.
Exactly. You knew what I was going for. But then Margo means pearl. And that's interesting to me because she's so mean and abrasive, you know? But that's what makes pearls, literally. Is sand. Sand grating, you know, makes something beautiful. So that makes sense for her character too. It's really cool. The Karen one made me laugh just because for one, that's such a normal name to have.
Right.
It literally just means each of the two. So it's funny because at first she's on Margo's side, then she's on Eve's side, and then she's back, you know, on Margo's side. And Addison, this is what made me laugh.
He is the fence, man.
Right? Exactly. And then Addison literally just means son of Adam.
Right.
So interesting to see
Adam,
that.
Adam and Eve.
Yeah, Adam and Eve.
Right.
It's a real temple tapper.
I just like that. I love that because sometimes, you know, people don't do that, but most people do. And I wanted to see how it fit in here. I was like, oh, I didn't even realize it right in front of my face. And I just kind of love that kind of thing. And they did a lot of it here.
Yeah.
Lloyd just means gray. So I don't know what that means. But he's just there.
Oh, yes, you will. You theater people always do. Nothing is forever in the theater. Whatever it is, it's here. It flares up, burns hot, and it's gone. I wish I could believe that. Give yourself time. Don't worry too much about what people think. You're very young and very talented. And believe it or not, if there's anything I can do.
There is something.
I think I know.
Something most important you can do.
You want to play Cora. You want me to tell Lloyd I think you should play it.
If you told him so, he'd give me the part. He said he would.
After all you've said, don't you know that part was written for Margo?
It might have been 15 years ago. It's my part now.
You talk just as Addison said you did.
Cora is my part. You've got to tell Lloyd it's for me.
I don't think anything in the world would make me say that.
Addison wants me to play it.
Over my dead body.
That won't be necessary. Addison knows how Margo happened to miss that performance. How I happened to know she'd miss it in time to call him and notify every paper in town. It's quite a story. Addison could make quite a thing of it. Imagine how snide and vicious he could get and still tell nothing but the truth. I had a time persuading him. You better sit down. You look a bit wobbly.
The reason that they're at the restaurant is to celebrate Bill and Margot's engagement. And Karen asks,
What are you going to wear? Something simple. A fur coat over a nightgown.
when she's blackmailing her, you can ultimately see like Karen is the last person to actually get what is going on.
Right.
Because we see Karen at the beginning. Now, because Karen is such a nice person to a point, I mean, somebody who siphons off gas, like they're very questionable at the most. And now all four of those people are like, fuck this bitch. Margo, she comes back to the table, like her face white and realizing like, oh no, what have I done? And then that's when Margo's just like, so I'm old. I don't want to really go out for these young person roles. So whatever role you got next time, give it to somebody else. And then Karen's just like, oh, I got out of this. This is amazing. Oh my God. And so they're all just like, what the fuck is happening? So now we get Addison and Eve in the room. And then Eve has just got this plan. It's like, so what's going to happen next is I'm going to go fuck Lloyd, and then I'm going to try to fuck Bill, and then I'm going to get the roles, and this is what's going to happen. And then Addison is just like, all right, we're not doing this.
Bring the hammer down, bitch.
His takedown of her is savage. Like he just cuts her to the quick. He's like,
But the best part about it is Eve is going to try the shit on Addison, where it's just like, oh, well, and he's just like, knock it off. Stop that.
Remember when she throws herself on the bed and she's sobbing? Yes. She's doing that thing that so many women know this, whether it's conscious or not. But if I start crying, the men will feel bad for me. And he's like, bitch, don't even try it on me. I don't care. Like, does not work on me.
So it's funny because I didn't know this, but this movie has a really big gay following. Like, I think it's because of scenes like this.
Because it's messy and gays love this.
It's messy. It
is
public drama. It should be private drama, but it's public drama. Yeah.
Yes.
Who doesn't love it? Who isn't Marie Kondo about that? Love that. That's me. I'm that person. I'm like, I want to watch it all. I don't want to be involved.
Marie Kondo convinced a bunch of people just to throw out shit in their house, and everybody's just like, this woman's a genius.
My work is done.
Closely, Eve. It's time you did. I am Addison DeWitt. I'm nobody's fool, least of all yours.
I never intended you to be.
Yes, you did, and you still do.
I still don't know what you're getting at. But right now I want to take my nap. It's important
right now that we talk. Killer to killer.
Champion to champion.
Not with me, you're no champion. You're stepping way up in class.
Addison, will you please say what you have to say, plainly and distinctly, and then get out so I can take my nap?
Oh, very well, plainly and distinctly, though I consider it unnecessary because you know as well as I do what I'm going to say. Lloyd may leave Karen, but he will not leave Karen for you.
What do you mean by that?
More plainly and more distinctly, I have not come to New Haven to see the play, discuss your dreams, or pull the ivy from the walls of Yale. I've come here to tell you that you will not marry Lloyd, or anyone else for that matter, because I will not permit it.
What have you got to do with it?
Everything. Because after tonight, you will belong to me.
Belong? To you? I can't believe my ears.
A dull cliche.
Belong to you? It sounds medieval. Something out of an old melodrama.
So does the history of the world for the past 20 years. I don't enjoy putting it as bluntly as this. Frankly, I'd hoped that somehow you would have known, that you would have taken it for granted that you and I...
Taken it for granted? That you and I...
because he knows everything about her backstory is like her parents are poor and they hadn't talked to her in 3 years and they're asking how you're doing.
Like, she went on a deep dive. Like, I want to see the side scenes of him like going and interviewing people and writing notes down. Be like, oh, really?
To begin with, your name is not Eve Harrington. It's Gertrude Sloshinsky.
What of it?
It's true your parents were poor. They still are. They would like to know how you are and where. They haven't heard from you for 3 years.
What of it?
A matter of opinion, granted. It's also true that you worked in a brewery. But life in the brewery was apparently not as dull as you pictured it. In fact, it got less and less dull until your boss's wife had your boss followed by detectives.
She never proved anything, not a thing.
But the $500 you got to get out of town brought you straight to New York, didn't it? That $500 brought you straight to New York, didn't it?
She was a liar. She was a liar.
Answer my question. Weren't you paid to get out of town? There was no Eddie, no pilot. You've never been married. That was not only a lie, it was an insult to dead heroes and the women who loved them. San Francisco has no Schubert Theater. You've never been to San Francisco. That was a stupid lie, easy to expose, not worthy of you.
I had to get in to meet Margo. I had to say something, be somebody, make her like me.
And she did like you. She helped and trusted you. You paid her back by trying to take Bill away.
That's not true.
I was there. I saw you and heard you through the dressing room door.
He says to her, "Is like, you were paid $500 to leave your brewery job and get out of town. You had an affair with your boss. You don't have a husband who was a pilot named Eddie, who was killed in the war." And the part he says where he's just like, that's disrespectful, even to the truth. And I'm sitting next to Crystal and I'm like, stolen valor!
Stolen valor.
Stolen valor.
I will not refer to you by your husband's rank. Yeah.
I mean, smart for her. She knew that, if you shook a tree, you'd find a war widow at that point.
Right.
So it's like...
right?
Addison is just like,
easy
San
lie.
Francisco doesn't even have a Schubert Theater. You've
Right.
never been to San Francisco? That was a dumb lie.
It's a
Easy
dumb
to
lie.
explain.
And then the theater they're performing at in New Haven is the Schubert. So
My
part of what
goodness,
he's
so
like,
lazy.
yeah. So part of what he's, I think, if you go back and look at it again, right, he's testing her the entire time to see if she could be as good as he is. And then, so she doesn't remember the lie that she, like, in that scene where she's in the shower, she doesn't remember the lie that she told Karen and Bertie and Margo. And now they're in New Haven in front of the Schubert Theater, and she doesn't remember the lie that she told Addison. Right.
Yeah.
So he's like, oh, Eve, you're just not as good as this as you think you are. Right. Like, you can be so good, but you're going to need my help to start keeping track of this. Like, write things down or however Addison does it. Right.
Diary.
Keep a little diary of the lies
And
you're
that's
telling.
why that's why now I'm like, oh, he absolutely is gay. Like,
Absolutely.
No,
He's-
yeah, 100%.
100%.
He's like, I don't want to be with you because like who you are. Like, I just want the power.
Right.
He wanted
But-
a protege to like shape. He wanted to shape her and be the person responsible who was like in that little sphere of power with her. And he knew he could do it through her
Which
because
is
she's
funny.
young and beautiful and everyone wants her around.
Which is funny because the person that this is based off of, the actress husband, was gay.
Oh, wow.
So
It's
that's
very,
part
very
of-
common. Yeah. I see, I probably overread gayness into most classic movies because it's a pastime line. It's fun. But I go further than a lot of other people. I think Eve is gay as well. Like Addison
Oh, yeah,
says,
she-
like you are like me and you need to recognize that you're like me, and if you do, then we can really take this thing over, right? So both of them have this thing I was talking about with George Sanders, where it's like they could play like, oh, obviously men would want her and she can be sexy in a heteronormative way, etc. But this, she's also, unlike a lot of other actors of her time, she has like this short hair and she's kind of wily looking. And so she looks like a coded queer lesbian as much as George Sanders looks like a coded queer gay man, right? And that's why I think Bertie doesn't like her, because Bertie's gay too, right? We can agree on that at least.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah,
No, I can see it.
but Bertie's like, oh, I see this little girl. She's playing a straight, right? She's trying to get these straights on her side, right? But I know who she is, right? I get this entirely.
It's a gay sixth sense.
No, but that, you know what? Now that you're saying that, I can totally see it, because Eve is never, oh, I'm in love. I have feelings.
Yeah.
This is just, he's got this going. He's a producer. He is a playwright. I know they both find me attractive. I'm going to use it, because she wanted anything to get her out of, if anything, she probably was a little bit in love with Margo.
Right.
That's the person she was, into, but she knew she couldn't
If
act
anybody,
on it. If anybody. Karen was just another pawn. Everybody was pawns, but Margo was like, there was that attraction there. Not on Margo's part, because Margo obviously is 100% straight. She loves dick. But like, no, I can see that now that you're saying. I didn't even think about it, but like, that is a cool read on it, and I agree with you, and that's how I will do it from now on.
Yeah, they form like, well, that's how I look at every movie like that. But yeah, that they form this unholy marriage, right? Like from the point of view of the 1950s time. So maybe they'll get married literally, but they're not in love with each other, right? And they're just home wreckers, and they destroy everything, right? And if it is to sleep with Marilyn Monroe, it's to get something from her. It's not to actually like enjoy that from her, right?
I thoroughly believe that he never slept with Marilyn. I think it's one of those relationships where we should be together because we like hanging out. We could just be buddies. We don't have to have sex.
It seems like I've seen people do this, where they sort of in a weird way collect pretty people, like pretty things.
Right.
Because they know, and we all know, a lot of having any power in any kind of society is being pretty. I think that's what Addison sees in these girls. It's like they're beautiful and they have potential, and he's like, I'm gonna harness that potential because it's my path to power and whatever in this society.
Yeah, he did it for clout.
Yeah, he's the original clout chaser.
In a weird fucked up way.
And he gives up on Marilyn Monroe's character because she's not who the real Marilyn Monroe was, which was a very smart person who played dumb really, really well and was able to like harness her sexuality. And obviously that ended up tragically for her. It didn't work for the rest of her life, but she was able to harness her sexuality, get things that she wanted, become the most famous woman in the world, except for the queen, right? and like, because she was that, but her character isn't like that. Her character doesn't have the killer instincts, right? So then he moves on to Eve, and Eve almost has that, and then he's so disappointed. What I love about the scene with him and Eve in the hotel room is that he's so disappointed in her as well. Like, I kind of almost thought you were as smart as me, and you're not, right? Because like, okay, you belong to me, you're going to do my bidding, etc., but you're not my equal, and maybe for a little bit I thought you were,
Yeah, bitch.
Yeah.
Like, we were all rooting for you.
How dare you?
I've never seen anybody do that line as calmly as that, Drew.
Yeah, right.
We thought we were going to be something great. like, I'm going to be in charge of you from now on.
Right. Yeah, and she's trying to like surprise him and like, oh, I did a side operation, right? I did a side operation for you, and aren't you going to be so proud? And he's like, I can't believe that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
What I'm confused about was at the end he says, hey, just go on that stage and you're going to get the best performance of your life. Was he talking about the show, or was he talking about the Sarah Sid Award?
Oh, that's interesting.
I think it was the award. I thought it was the award. That's how I...
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I thought it was just going to be one of those nights where it's just like, she's going to give this amazing performance that night. And then this is what was the catalyst to her getting the Sarah Sid Award.
But yeah, again, we're doing it. It's not textually that. I mean, textually it is that you're going to go on tonight and perform. But you're right. The next scene that we see is the speech of the Sarah Siddon. So that makes perfect sense. That's the Mankiewicz time fuck thing that we're doing, right? And this is Citizen Kane, right?
It dissolves back to where it starts from the beginning, and it's the Sarah Siddon Award, and she gives credit to everybody at that table that fucking hates her guts.
I love that.
Yeah.
Honestly, that look that Betty Davis cuts to her is kind of... I mean, it's on the DVD of the movie. Like, it's just like... All right.
Yeah.
It's just, as smoking that cigarette, it's like, all right.
I know she's getting the Sarah Siddon award, right? That she's getting. So I looked it up on Wikipedia. Apparently, Sarah Siddon was a Welsh actress. She was the best known, I'm going to say this wrong, tragedian. She was literally a critic of the time named her Tragedy Personified.
I like that.
I was like, this is hilarious.
I mean, it's perfect because like
No, it's great. That's what I love. I love things like this.
This
I love
woman ruined, almost tried to ruin a friend group because she could.
Yeah, the end of the party scene, right? I forget. Somebody goes downstairs, and then the camera goes into this picture and holds on this picture at the top of the stairs, and that's a picture of Sarah Siddons.
Yes.
Playing Tragedy. Yeah. So I wouldn't have known that, obviously, unless we're looking at it.
It's a real temple tapper. It was a real temple tapper. Everybody's leaving, and then Margo congratulates her because in the speech she's basically saying like, "That's been so great. I'm going to Hollywood. You know, I don't know what that's gonna do for me. Like, she's gonna be a fucking Hollywood star. This is before Hollywood was it. Like post-war, when people talk about like the Hollywood of like when they talk about Hollywood, they talk about like the 30s and shit. But like this is when it made the boom. I mean, Kynan, you know. So Penny will get this, but Kynan and Crystal won't. He basically gives her the John Cena very fine speech. John Cena is so good that, you know, he's been the face of WWE for a little bit, and like now he's in Hollywood, so he doesn't have to take bumps anymore. And so like whenever a new person comes up and they're trying to make their name off of John Cena, they'll do this like couple minute long promo against them, and John Cena's just taking it in, and John Cena will always say it's like, "It's a very fine speech," and then he'll just eviscerate the fuck out of this person.
Yep.
And so
beautiful gowns.
Margo,
Beautiful gowns.
Exactly. And so Margo is just like, "Nice speech."
Nice speech, Eve. But I wouldn't worry too much about your heart. You can always put that award where your heart ought to be.
It sets up the answer to the aging problem in this really icky sort of way, which is like, what she really has to do is accept the roles that are her age, right? And that's what that's her problem. Is she has to stop taking the younger parts. She has to take the 40-year-old parts. But there are no 40-year-old parts for women.
Exactly.
In the 1950s, right?
No, they actually have them. It's just a casket with the actress name on. It's like, how dare you? 40-year-old woman can't be in movies. As it's like, oh, you're not going to go to this party? It's like, yeah, I don't really feel like it. Well, bitch, I'm going to go to this party, so sucks for you.
Right.
She goes back to her apartment by herself, and you see the suitcases just around everywhere where she's going to make that move to Hollywood. Like she's just packing up her life that she's built in the past 6 months. We come in and we see kind of like a horror movie. The way it's shot is a fucking horror movie.
Yeah.
Where she walks into that room and she's working on her face, and you see this girl in the background just and then she turns around and is like, "What the fuck?" I'm like, "What are you doing here?" And she's just like, "Hi, I'm just your really big fan. You know, my name's Phoebe."
President of the fan club.
She says, "You know how all the high schools have Eve Harrington fan clubs." I don't know if Eve does know that, but she's like, "I've heard of that. Yes."
Like actress?
Yeah. Do they have that within 7 months of her? Yeah. Right.
Apparently.
But just like yeah. But Eve just like, "Oh great, yeah. Of course they do. Of course they have."
Arthur Miller, like, come on. But it's basically like, I just wanted to come and talk to you. You know, you're such a big idol of mine, and you know, I just want to ask the world of you. And then she asked her, she's like, what part of town you live? It's like, I live in Brooklyn, and I'm assuming they're in like Manhattan. So like, Penny, you know, like you know,
yes.
Right? So
she's right. It's a trek. She went out of her way.
And so she's like, well, you could spend the night here. And she only does that because she feels so alone. Because she sacrificed everything. And what did it get her? Nothing. Shout out to Thanos. R.I.P.
I really miss my nigga.
Was it worth it?
Exactly. Accepts her coming in. And I think this is Kynan, because you were saying Eve was gay, right?
I think so. Yeah. I
so I mean, that might be part of the reason too, where it's just like, totally.
Yeah,
it's like, oh, this really, young.
Here's a young woman who's like and is gonna wait on me hand and foot and start cleaning up my messes. And yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's what they call it. But she's played by an actress named Barbara Bates. I did not get enough time to see what she has done.
Don't worry, she also killed herself like George Sanders. So
okay, cool. Yeah,
that's Hollywood, baby.
Hollywood, baby.
No, but she's so good in this, isn't she? Like, yeah.
Oh yeah.
I showed this to my boyfriend yesterday, and he was like, "Oh, who's this woman? Like, everyone else is famous. You know, who's this?" And I was like, "Oh, I don't know." And then I had to look her up, and she didn't have as much of a career as like this performance deserves. She's so good.
Oh yeah, it's a fan because it's only like what 8 minutes, everything, but she's so captivating in that entire 8 because she's doing it play by play,
same exact thing,
and Eve doesn't clock it because if you're a sociopath, you have to believe your lie,
right?
And so I thoroughly believe that Eve cannot spot that she is lying to her because she's so deep into that lie that she's just like, oh my god, this hot young girl is here. Like, I'm not going to take advantage of the situation, but I might take advantage of the situation. And so there's a knock on the door. Phoebe goes to answer it. Addison is just like, oh, hi, how's it going? And drops off the award.
You rest. I'll get it.
Hello. Who are you?
Miss Harrington's resting, Mr. DeWitt. She asked me to see who it is.
Oh, well, we won't disturb her rest. It seems Miss Harrington left her award in the taxi cab. Will you give it to her? Tell me, how did you know my name?
It's a very famous name, Mr. DeWitt.
And what's your name?
Phoebe.
Phoebe?
I call myself Phoebe.
And why not? Tell me, Phoebe, do you want someday to have an award like that of your own?
More than anything else in the world.
Then you must ask Miss Harrington how to get one. Miss Harrington knows all about it.
Who was it? Just a taxi driver, Miss Harrington. You left your award in his cab and he brought it back.
Oh. Put it on one of the trunks, will you? I want to pack it.
Sure, Miss Harrington.
Addison's like, who are you? She says, I call myself Phoebe, which is hilarious. Like, I call myself Phoebe.
Right.
And why?
Basically saying, I have an assumed thing going on here too.
And then she's just walking around the hotel, all the suitcases around her. And then she ends up putting on the fur that Eve left on the couch.
The cape.
The cape, sorry. It was on the
Literally assumes the mantle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then holding the award. And then doing the same thing she sort of did with Margot's dress. And then does the bow. Bow. And then it cuts to the end.
Well, then there's that shot of her in the mirrors where it shows all these copies of her, and it's like there's always another one. There's always another one.
And chickens are gonna come home to roost.
And yeah, it's just such a thing where you're like, oh, this happens a lot.
Yeah.
And like, because it's weird because with men, it's more just like, I want that thing that he has. Like, men will openly say it 90% of the time. Like, oh yeah, I want what that person has,
right?
And to take it. But with women, because they have to be nice in society, it's just like, what is the most diabolical way I can get this? Like,
well, it's because like you said, we're made to be nice by society. We're not allowed to be aggressive and violent.
That's why
and
Mean Girls
overt.
exist.
That's why what? Oh, Mean Girls? Yeah, no.
That's why
we
Mean
have
Girls.
to. Yeah, we have to do everything in subterfuge and subtext and
Well, I think more than that, women in society are supposed to supplant each other. We get to a certain age. Exactly. We get to a certain age and we don't have value anymore, especially in media and especially in Hollywood.
There's only room for one at a time. Like if you look at the history of Hollywood, Like yeah, exactly. Highlander rules. There's like one woman director at a time. Like there's no smoking gun where like you see the studio heads getting together and deciding that. But like there's one female director in the 20s, then she retires, and there's one in the 30s, and there's one in the 40s, and it's like on and on and on. And so so yeah, it's this weird thing that like do they know what they were doing, or just really is like, no, why would I take a chance on a woman and hire you and be our director? We already have an Ida Lupino. Like we already have one, right?
Exactly. You already checked that box. I don't need to do it again.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've done all of our diversity. We don't have to do any more.
Exactly. Even before diversity was, a buzzword and something you had to do, they've been doing it all this time.
Yeah.
Like
who's the lady director now? Greta Gerwig.
Greta Gerwig
now.
Yeah, no.
Greta Gerwig. It's her. And
the way of the dog woman who basically had that really weird
yes.
run.
Oh, the power of Jane Campion, right? But like the studio one, who's going to get the hundreds of millions of dollars movie, that might only be Greta Gerwig. I don't know.
Gerwig.
Is there another one?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
I don't know.
And then she can write another long-winded 5-minute speech about how it's hard to be a woman. Like, yeah, this is a good movie to watch. It's like I had forgotten about it, but not really, because it's so good. Because like they consider it one of the best screenplays ever.
Miss Davis, ever since I've been on this set, I've heard nothing but discussion of Eve. May I have your opinion of her?
The golden girl, the cover girl, the girl next door, the girl on the moon. Time's been very good to Eve. Life goes where she goes. She's been profiled, covered, revealed, reported. What she wears and where and when, whom she knows and where she was and when and where she's going. Eve has insatiable ambition and talent. An improbable person with a contempt for humanity, an inability to love or be loved.
But how can such a woman fool so many?
How does any Eve do it?
Apparently, Betty Davis filmed all of her scenes in 16 days.
Yikes! Wow.
2 weeks. Yeah.
I wonder how long principal photography was in general. Like, how long it took them to film the whole thing.
I would say just like a month, because like the movie stopped in July, and then that's when Bill and Margo in real life got married.
Yeah, like 2 weeks after.
July
Wild.
1950. Yeah.
So do you want a little tidbit about art imitating life, imitating art? Zsa Zsa Gabor kept arriving on set because she was jealous of her husband George Sanders in his scenes with the young blonde ingenue Marilyn Monroe.
My goodness! Wow.
Isn't that funny? Oh,
And
that's
then
hilarious.
The funny part is George Sanders leaves her for her sister.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Of course. And so apparently, Betty Davis and Ann Baxter were really friendly on set.
Mm-hmm.
And so the studio was always trying to like make it seem like, ooh, we hate each other. But she's like, the studio tried to play that up all during filming. We're called Baxter, but I liked Betty very much. She'd come on the set and go at me, but it was just a joke between us. Davis liked Baxter too, which is quite a compliment, as Davis reportedly didn't often like her female co-stars. She felt that Baxter did an excellent job with her part as Eve and publicly praised her for it. That's funny.
It's an amazing film. Like, like watching it again, I'm just like, oh, that's why I like movies.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, you know, if this was Thor Ragnarok, I would be like, fucking All About Eve. What? No.
Yeah, where's the Matt Damon cameo in All About Eve?
Thank you. Thank you.
In 1970, this was adapted into a Broadway musical called Applause. And in 1973 was a made-for-TV movie called Applause, and Lauren Bacall played Margo Channing. And when Bacall left the show, the actress who took over the role was Ann Baxter.
Get out! Wow.
Right. Yeah. So it's like full circle.
And
I gotta see that. Wow.
And it's funny because in England they did the stage play of All About Eve. Margo was played by Gillian Anderson from.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, on the stage.
Really?
Yeah.
And
then
a clip of that. That was good.
Yeah, and Eve was played by Lily James.
Oh, that makes sense. So good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Nothing, really.
The kid, Junior, that is, will be right down. Unless, of course, you'd like to take her drink up to her.
I can always get a fresh one.
Karen, the general atmosphere is very Macbethish. What has or is about to happen?
What's he talking about?
Macbeth.
We know you. We've seen you before like this. Is it over or just beginning? Fasten your seatbelts. It's gonna be a bumpy night.
Kynan, thank you for coming onto our show. We
Yes, thank you
appreciate it.
so much.
Yeah.
Where can people
cool-
see you or hear about you?
Oh, well, they could find me on Instagram and Letterboxd at Howdy Kynan, Kynan. I'm also the host of a couple of shows on the TrueStory.fm network of podcasts. So my current two shows are The Exorcist Minute, where we look at each minute of The Exorcist on one episode at a time.
Really?
Yeah. We also go into
I
the
need to
history of
listen.
the devil, that, and then how it's depicted in pop culture. And then I'm on a show called Sitting in the Dark, which is a monthly show where we try to explore different themes within horror and subgenres within horror. So look out pretty soon for the next episode. Will be on survival horror.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I'm gonna check those.
I'm gonna check those out.
Please do. Well, I just wanted to say, Penny, Crystal, Drew, I'll never forget this night as long as I live, and I'll never forget you for making it possible.
Wow. You know where you need to put that podcast? You need to put that podcast where your heart is supposed to be.
All right, guys. We'll see how this applies as Toni and Mariah delve further and further into insanity. And you know how it ends here at Home Wrestling League. It just stops the way Eve just leaves. It's an Irish goodbye.